Hello, I'm Jake.
Hi, I'm Carrie.
And this is Love You Like Crazy, the podcast where we talk and rant about young adult books.
So we read a book.
Yeah, what book did we read?
We read Hole in the Middle by Kendra Fortmeyer.
Yes, and it came out on Soho Teen today, this very day that we're releasing this episode.
I know! I love that we get to do this. I'm really excited about actually recording something and having it come out the day that the book does, because that makes us like super special.
Yes. So in the interest of full disclosure, we should say that we got early copies of the book for review. And also, you know the author.
I do. I don't know her very well. She used to live in North Carolina, which you might be able to tell from said book. So I did meet her a few times in this area, but we are not like BFFs. But I'm friends with her still, Facebook and whatnots. And this book came out and I was just really excited to read it. And now I'm really excited to talk about it.
Likewise. And for the next episode, we're going to talk about 17th Summer by Maureen Daly. One of the first, or maybe actually the first young adult novel identified as such. So if you want to get prepared for that, you can read that next. But today we're talking about Hole in the Middle, and there's going to be spoilers. So I would say, not to tip my hand too much, but I really enjoyed reading this book, and it was kind of compulsive reading for me, in fact, when I started it. So
yeah, I read it. I think my first go round was like, I think just like you, I read like one chapter and put it down. And then when I got to pick it up again, I read the whole rest of the book on my lunch break.
Yeah. And there's a lot of kind of twists and turns. So it may actually be worth going out and buying a copy and reading it before you listen to us.
Yeah, I think, because the writer is, a sort of a reader of the young adult genre as well. I think she sort of avoided a lot of the tropes that could have happened and surprised me a lot, which I really appreciated because as someone who reads a lot of YA, I can often sort of predict exactly how the book is going to go. And then I'm really disappointed when I'm right. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I was wrong. And I loved that.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we've already sort of started talking about it. So let's get to the discussion proper.
Yay.
Hurrah.
The book itself is about a young woman named Morgan who has a literal hole in her middle. She was born with sort of a piece of her abdomen, not necessarily gone, but sort of moved with a tunnel of nothing in the middle.
It's not totally centered. It's like just below her belly button to the right. And her organs are kind of where they would, the organs that normally would be there have kind of mushed out of the way. So she's had it since birth. Like when I read the summary of this book, I thought it might be like a magical realism kind of thing, but it isn't. It isn't,
but I mean, there are hints of it here and there, which I like.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's actually somewhat realism.
Yeah. Like there's a lot in this book about kind of the metaphorical meanings of the hole, but it's also clear that the hole, one of the things about the hole is it's an actual medical condition that, people are worried about and are trying to cure.
Yeah, it's something that, she's had myriad surgeries to try to fix, or rather her mother has had her have myriad surgeries for her to fix. And so, yes, it is an actual literal hole in her middle.
And so when the book opens, she's in high school still, and her doctor, her primary care physician, I suppose, is contacted by this other doctor who reveals that there's a boy who is sort of the opposite, right, who has a lump instead of a hole.
But it's in the exact opposite spot of hers, in the exact size and shape as hers.
Right. And it's due to a similar, they do some kind of genetic analysis, and it's due to a similar but opposite defect.
Mutation
mutation is a better word. And man, stuff happens.
A lot of stuff happens. So I like that it was weird. I like weird. But also like not completely unbelievably so. Like we said before, it's sort of skirts around being magical realism by being like sort of grounded in imaginary science.
Yeah. I did think that. So kind of my favorite bizarre thing is so Howie's doctor is basically the brains behind this whole attempt to cure things by bringing them together.
Yeah, she's a very driven woman, and she thinks she found out how to fix shit, and she's going to do it.
And the point where I'm like, okay, so like this is crazy is like where she's like, okay, so now obviously
you're going to have to match up.
Yeah. It's like, that is bonkers. That is not any kind of a medical thing that anyone would have to do.
Like, there are so many ways around that. Like, take a mold of one.
Yeah.
And then see if it fits into the other. Or take a mold of both and see if they fit together.
Or, as Morgan suggests, use a ruler.
I mean, because if you want to see if they're the exact same shape and the exact same size, like, pour some plaster of Paris in that shit and fucking figure it out. Don't make them just like stand there like, I don't know, lump to hole, groin to groin. Like how obvious of a sexual thing can you make this?
Mouth to nipple.
Oh, mouth to nipple. And then everyone's all like, puzzle pieces, puzzle pieces. I was like, oh, that's just. Mm-mm.
But I kind of appreciated that, like, because it's sort of the obvious thing to think of, but it's also so bonkers. And so I could just kind of appreciate that the author just was like, yeah, I'll go there.
Like, fuck it.
We're going to do this fucking thing. All right.
We're just going to do this.
You're thinking it. I'm thinking it. Let's get that lump in that hole. See what happens.
At least they didn't get stuck that time.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, particularly once her hole starts to shrink.
Well, yeah, then it needs a lot more lube.
The best. Anyway, yeah, we like this book.
None of this is symbolic at all. What did you think of Howie?
So Howie,
besides just having the worst name ever.
All the Howie redacteds out there are just
like, fuck you, Carrie.
Unsubscribe. Howard Garrison.
Yeah, so Howie's lump boy.
Right. I mean, I think so. When I was thinking about like the metaphorical meanings of the whole, then I was trying to think what the metaphorical meanings of the lump are. And I think it's not as rich a vein to be mined.
No.
And I think Howie, like, he is a little bit of a lump, maybe. Like, I would say that the main thing I would think about him is that he's a nice guy. Like, saying someone is a nice guy can be a pejorative. In this case, that's not what I mean. Like,
no, I mean, Chad would consider himself a nice guy.
Oh God, Chad. We have to talk about Chad at some point.
Oh, of course we're going to have to talk about Chad. Chad's a huge part of the story, even though he doesn't have a huge, like, he's got a huge impact on the story.
Yeah, his page count is not high, but
no, but he like manipulates a lot in Morgan.
Yeah.
Literally and and metaphorically. Anyway.
Yes. So like, Howie, like, I feel bad about describing this in kind of negative terms, but like, he's part of a fairly large family that loves him.
Okay, here's how I would describe him. He's Wonder Bread with a gumball stuck on top.
Interesting.
Like, there's something like unassuming, a little bland, but like sweet.
Yeah.
He's not a bad guy. He's jealous.
So what you're referring to is that, like, kind of late in the book, the treatment starts working, but only for Morgan and not for Howie. So her hole starts to shrink, but his lump stays the same size. Man, it's weird to talk about the plot of this book.
Yeah, I mean, it's if we're talking about the overall plot, two people find each other, switch genetics, swap genetics. Anyway, words happen, things happen, and then her hole shrinks, his lump doesn't. And that's an uncomfortable feeling to witness, because I guess for me, like, I totally understood. Of course he's going to be jealous. Of course he's going to feel bad. Of course he's going to be upset that this treatment isn't working for him, but it's working for Morgan. But in and of himself, he's just a nice person who doesn't really offer a lot to the story, except for allowing Morgan to accept herself.
Yeah. I mean, just kind of my assumption is that it wouldn't end with them both being cured. Like, I thought that was kind of the least likely outcome. But what actually happened, I still found, the way that it played out was surprising to me.
How so?
Well, like, for a little while, I was like, I thought one of them might die, and it seemed like it was probably Howie, since she was the narrator. But then she started getting really sick.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, maybe she's going to die. But then it turns out that the reason that she was getting sick was actually that she was getting cured.
Which is just, pretty fucking painful as your organs are rearranging themselves in your body.
Yeah. And I thought that was like a clever... And also, I keep talking about metaphors, but sort of the idea that getting better or improving itself can be a painful thing, which I think is true. So I liked and appreciated the way that kind of played out.
I don't know. There's a lot of the book where I'm like, am I supposed to empathize with Morgan? Because I do and I don't. And maybe that's what makes her believable to me, because teenagers are insufferable and teenagers really are indecisive in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I also liked how whenever they tried to talk about something real, the other person would make a joke to try to deflect it. Like, this is a dynamic which I'm 100% familiar with.
You don't do that.
Oh, I totally do that.
No.
Anyway.
Okay, and here's another question.
Yes.
Did anybody ever say anything good about her art?
Oh, you mean beyond we can work with this?
Yeah. Like, she talks about being an artist, and I'm like, everybody dogs on her art. So is she good, or is she only as good as her mother can buy for her?
Right.
Does she just like have the soul of an artist or an artiste, and sort of does what she can with what she's got? But nobody ever said anything positive. Like, when Howie saw her art, he was like, here's where it's wrong. And all the people who ran the galleries were like, I guess you got promise.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like that's, I mean, if you're, I don't know, what is she, 17?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to think that there are too many people who are, breaking out at that age as artists.
Yeah, I'm sure there aren't. But also, when she's at the first gallery, Loblolly, she sees someone from school that she's like, oh my God, I was in class with this girl and she was amazing. So like, even she's dogging on her own art.
Yeah, well, she has something about that, right?
It's chapter 5. Have you ever considered yourself an artist, a sketcher, painter, sculptor, a knitter, baker, dancer, DJ, chef, writer, musician, poet, street artist, singer, freestyle rapper, builder, bookbinder, blacksmith, an actor, photographer, filmmaker, gardener, game designer, programmer, soldier, sailor, tinker, spy? If you've ever done any of these things, you are an artist.
If you're an artist, then you do the thing because you love it, even though it's hard. And on the best days, you feel like you're flying. And then on the second best days, you remember the feeling of feathers. But if you're an artist, you also know what it's like to think that your work might not be very good, to think sometimes that your work might be terrifically bad, that some days the tracks you lay down or the colors you mix up or the papier that you mache are actually decent, are actually good, but other times all you can feel is how heavy and clumsy your hands and feet are and how far you have to go.
And you also know that no matter how far you are from where you want to be, even that with this voice inside your head saying, this is bad, this is melodramatic, who are you kidding, yourself? And you kind of gently talk yourself into it. You kind of gently begin to believe, I'm not that good at this. I'm just messing around. Why would anyone like my stuff anyway? Even then,
there's some part of you that hopes deep down that another person might look at your art and catch their breath, that they'll see the light of everything you want to be glimmering there, and they'll know you not for who you are, but for what you want to be. They'll see you and know you have the ability to burst into flight. I mean, I think that the book, I don't know, I feel like it's purposely kind of agnostic on the question of whether or not her art is actually good. Like, we don't see anyone having that reaction to her art, although they do have that reaction to, like, her existence.
Yeah, I mean, her art isn't that way, but, you know, especially in their last, sort of her art installation at the mansion on its last night was the, what's your hole?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's what was kind of interesting about that to me is like, she talks about different things that the hole can be a metaphor for. Like the first thing she mentions is because the internet is the worst.
Which it is.
Yeah. So because the internet's the worst, like the first thing that comes up is like when photographs of her hole start getting posted online, one of the things that people talk about are like, oh, another hole, like this girl has two holes or another hole.
Haha, something else to fuck.
Yeah. But other things like it's this thing that you keep hidden, that you worry that people will judge you for. It can also obviously be like a thing that you lack, a thing that needs to be filled, some aspect of yourself that you don't understand, and so on and so forth. It can be all these things. As I said, it's also an actual physical hole in her body that is a medical curiosity. But by the end of the book, like she takes on this whole metaphorical meaning of the hole so much that when she identifies what her own hole is, it's not her actual hole. It's like the fact that she hasn't been a great friend to Caro.
I think, and maybe it's, part of sort of, I guess it's finding herself and figuring out who she is. She was able to be like, okay, this is me. I've been me my whole life. Let's talk about something else now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing, so Caro's boyfriend is in college.
Yes.
And then, what's his name? Oh, Chad the douchebag.
Oh, yeah.
Is also like a college boy. And nothing is really explicitly made of this, but I feel like, this sort of idea of like these college dudes sort of going after these high schoolers. Although Todd, Caro's boyfriend, actually seems to be a nice guy. Yeah,
I didn't hate him. Like I didn't quite understand like why Morgan thought he was so boring. I'm like, he seems like a pretty okay guy. He obviously adores your best friend, and he's in a band. Like, how boring is that?
Oh, well, I can explain that, Carrie. It's because she would like any excuse to hate him.
Well, I know this.
And he doesn't really provide much, so you just kind of go with the fact that, like, yeah, he's in an indie band. He doesn't know what to say to her, and so boring is about the best she could do.
I'm like, okay, so he wears boat shoes. That's really all you can say about him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't hate Boring Todd at all.
So were there things about the story that you weren't expecting?
I think Chad surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
So shall we just get into it?
Let's get into Chad. That guy's I was going to say he's the worst, but he's not.
He's not the worst.
He's just terrible, but he's not the worst.
But he's also, there are things about him that aren't terrible.
Yes.
So he's not Morgan's dad.
Well, no. We need to talk about Morgan's dad too.
Who is the literal actual worst.
Yeah.
So Chad, so Morgan had started going to this bar or this club, which was called the Mansion, and using her fake ID to get drunk and dance with crop tops, like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, who was very handsome, very nice blue eyes, bought her a drink, and it was a Coke, and he did not drug it, so he says.
Yep.
And they flirt, and then they go their separate ways. And then they see each other again, and they flirt, and they go their separate ways. And finally, Morgan's like, okay, I want to fuck this guy.
Yep.
So she gets some condoms, and she goes, and they flirt, and they're going to go get out of there. And he's like, okay, I'm going to take you back to my dorm, and we're going to get it on.
Uh-huh.
Which is exactly how it went down. That's, I am giving you a word by word description of exactly how it happened. He said, yeah, we're going to get it on.
And I appreciated that he, before he knew that she already bought condoms, he was like, we got to stop by the drugstore first.
I appreciate the safer sex. However, they're getting hot and heavy, and it's just like, okay, finally, this is going to happen.
So at this point, my basic thought is like, so this is clearly something that she's not going to look back. This is a decision that she's going to look back on later and think, I probably could have done better there, but it won't be it's not a disaster.
No,
she could do better, but she could also do worse.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was, it would be a fine first time. However, he decided to try to get the condom by putting his hand through her hole.
Yeah.
Not okay, Chad. Not even like in the slightest bit okay. Like I don't have any friends that I know of with holes in their body like that. I know people with holes in their body. Everyone has holes in their body, but not anything like this. I think I know better than to just shove my hand through somebody's body without asking. Like, I think I know better, and Chad did not.
That whole like Chad scene, like in retrospect, kind of I was just sort of thinking of it in like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom terms, like just reaching into your body and pulling out organs.
Oh,
just the worst.
He even said he thought she'd be into it. And that, my friends, is why Chad is one of the worst. Yeah, like what a fucking, like, I was going to say what a chode, but really what a Chad. Like how fucking Chad can you be?
None more Chad.
None more Chad than Chad. Oh my God, I love this. I'm sorry.
No, what do you love?
There's a time and a place to point out that virginity is a problematic social construct, but this isn't it. So I just say, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I wrote that down.
This is why we're friends.
Yeah, I appreciated that. And then later on, his like poster art installation advertising campaign.
So college.
I like that. I like that Morgan is like, is Chad doing this? But is he smart enough to even think of doing this?
No, his roommate was.
Yeah, his roommate came up with it. So he puts up all these posters around town that says, I'm sorry, whole girl. And that says to go to a website. And on the website, it says, check back in 15 days, 14 days. And she asked him like what he was going to have on the website. And he claims that it would be, like a dancing pickle gif or something dumb. And she's like, I don't actually believe that, but okay.
Yeah, that was weird to me. That whole thing was weird. Like, why did you do that? Anyway, let me see exactly what he said it was going to be. Let me look. Oh yeah, dancing banana.
Dancing banana, not pickle.
Let me just sort of talk about like one of the only problems I had with the whole book.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about, or in the book, it is talked about how, her mother is very, very wealthy. She makes like fitness instruction videos and is like a fitness guru to the stars. And so this girl, Morgan, she has an apartment with her best friend. Now I could see Morgan's mom being like, okay, fine, whatever, get your fucking apartment. But her best friend, Caroline, is also in said apartment. And I just don't know how believable that part is. I think it may have been slightly more believable to me if Caroline was a year older and was already in college or was already in her gap year or something.
Yeah, or if they were both in college even, because Morgan doesn't go to school a whole lot in this book.
No, she takes a medical leave. So she doesn't really even like her mom says she needs to keep up with stuff, but I don't know if that happened.
Right.
Your mom's going to let you move out of the house in this apartment together off of, somewhere in Raleigh. And like she sleeps over her boyfriend's house. I'm like, what? Where are the parents? Where are the parents, Jacob?
Well, that's always a question in these YA novels, I guess.
I mean, we know where Morgan's mom is. Like, we get it. And we know where her dad isn't. We get it. But with Carol, I'm just like, wait a second. Not sure how much I believe this part of the story.
Regarding Morgan's dad, whose name is Archie.
Oh God, what a shit face he is.
So he has basically he couldn't handle that she had the hole and deserted the family when she was 4 years old.
Yeah, because he really, really, really wanted kids, and Morgan's mom did not. But it was like, okay, fuck it, we'll have a kid. And they had the kid and had a hole. Archie couldn't deal. Archie bailed. Archie's a douche. Fuck you, Archie.
Right. So then he shows up and wants to like have lunch with her. And so there were two things I liked about this part where he gets back in touch. One is just how cutting her mother is about him. Like Morgan says, why is he only getting in touch now? Like, it's not like you're not famous and totally easy to track down and in all the magazines. And she says, only magazines you find in gym. And I'm sure he's never been to one of those. I liked that. And then also, so they make this lunch date. And then at the last minute, Morgan is like, fuck this. I'm going to go do something. I'll go do something with Howie instead. And she never looks back. And he basically is not in the book again.
Well, she suspects that the dad also blew her off.
Right.
Which I think is also like such a total Archie thing to do.
Yes.
Okay. So let's see. I wrote questions.
Okay.
My first one was Caro in Morgan's apartment. What the fuck?
Okay.
We covered that.
Yeah.
Question 2, Morgan's dad. What the fuck?
Yep.
Question 3, is Morgan self-centered out of circumstance or necessity?
Right. Yeah, I kind of feel like, well, I guess the lazy answer is both.
Of course the lazy answer is both, but why? I mean, as an only child,
yes,
I completely understand like that sort of like everything revolves around meanness of being an only child because you don't have to share with anybody. You don't have to negotiate with anybody, as I was, or am the only daughter or the only child of a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
So like Morgan and Alana, very similar dynamic in that, very overpowering parent and only child who has never needed to, again, negotiate. So can be somewhat self-centered and has to unlearn that a lot. And also, as she was a fairly, not sickly because she was never actually ill, but was in the hospital a lot and had a lot of testing and a lot of surgeries and a lot of recovering from surgery. She's always been sort of the center of attention. She's been, the person that all the doctors and nurses are doting upon.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of the lens that I came to kind of view her through, because like when I was a very small child, we had an aunt come to stay with us who was, I think, in her late teens. I forget exactly how old. And she had cystic fibrosis and basically knew that it was very unlikely that she would survive to adulthood. And as a result, like, was just kind of like, to hell with, I mean, I don't remember this personally, but my impression at least is that her attitude was just like, kind of to hell with other people's expectations and what they think I should do. I want to do what I want to do, and have fun, with what time I have here. And so, which is why that she wasn't staying with her parents, but was instead living with us, because
that was going to be my next question.
Because my parents,
so why was she with you?
My parents would let her do whatever the hell she wanted.
Hell yeah.
So I feel like, the fact that the whole doesn't really, like, it seems like there are some kind of metabolic differences. Like she talks about how she only gets her period once every 2 months normally. But, so the fact that it's not actually known whether this is dangerous at all is kind of makes that analogy not precise. But I do feel like part of it is just like, when you've been told your whole life, like, I don't know, maybe you're going to die. Like, we don't know, that would lead to a certain amount of like self-centeredness. And then particularly when she's been raised to hide away this, this thing that is unique about her, to not talk to anyone about this possible illness, and just to be like very guarded in that way. I think that would also kind of lead to that.
Yeah. I mean, her job is to have a perfect body.
Yes.
And then her daughter has an imperfect body. So she's been sort of not necessarily told to shame her body, but definitely modeled things in such a way where, Morgan sort of just knew, okay, I hide this away, which means, of course, keeping to yourself more, keeping quiet, not making waves, not having people notice you, because if they notice you, they're going to notice it.
Right. And it's not a coincidence that our best friend is the only person who knows about it.
Well, Boring Todd knows about it too, because he saw it.
Yes, that's true. And Dr. Takahashi,
who's awesome, and I love him.
Mm-hmm.
I would like him to be my doctor. If he's actually a doctor in this area, I need to find him and like snuggle up to him because he seems awesome.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Yeah.
When we started doing this podcast, did you expect that we do 2 episodes in a row where a character reads fan fiction written about themselves?
No, I did not. I don't believe I thought we'd read any books where a character read fan fiction about themselves, never mind 2 in a row.
Surprise.
Yeah. So the fan fiction in this book was, well, about as wild as the fan fiction in the last book.
Mm-hmm.
Is all fan fiction racy? I believe I asked this question last time, but I'm going to ask it again. Is all fan fiction racy?
No, I mean, last time we mentioned a couple examples that weren't like the one in Narnia.
Yeah.
With
Anthony Bourdain?
That's the one. Not racy.
No.
But it's like, it's I feel like it's common, and then even more common, and then also gets paid attention to by the likes of us.
I don't know if there's any like fan fiction of our podcast, but if there was, I would like it to be Narnia, y'all.
Yeah.
Please don't write them up my butt.
I mean, we've written fan fiction for this podcast. You understand.
Kevin Shapiro, Boy Orphan, Chapter 90210. Kevin awoke with a start to the sound of the jailer hitting the bars of the cell door with his nightstick. Got your last meal ready for you here. A waste of good food, you ask me, he growled unsympathetically. Kevin rubbed his eyes and sat up. Tears started to well up in his eyes as he retrieved his dinner and dejectedly wolfed down the hamburger, which was cooked rare and with ketchup and pickles, just the way he liked it. To be on death row.
And it was not erotic.
He didn't even commit.
Well, I guess I wrote one of the songs I wrote is kind of about fucking, but stare into these glasses, come into my van. We'll make sweet love all according to plan. Because I'm so sensitive.
Yeah, there's a lot of this
That's
book that
right,
I'm like,
so
this is a book that teenagers actually need to read.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of like good lessons if you're growing up to like understand that, hey, sometimes your first time having sex is going to be awkward and that's okay. Because she did eventually have sex with Sir Howie of Lump.
And that's like kind of been a thing through the book. Like at the beginning of the book, it basically opens with like, here are the options for a girl like me. Option A is not mention the hole until it kind of gets down to it. And then at that point, say, oh, by the way, I have this birth defect. And then, in her scenario, the dude is freaked out, runs away, and she never, she dies a virgin essentially. Mm-hmm. And then option B is just be open about it up front, and then no one will ever be interested in her. Then when she is going to hook up with Chad, she talks about how her biggest fear in losing her virginity is that she won't know what she's doing, and that it will just be awkward and bad. But then at the end of the book, she's like, and then we had sex and it was totally awkward and he lasted 3 minutes and it was like, and we just ended up laughing and it was like pretty, it was fine.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of that in this book where I'm just like, people need to read this for things like that. A 16 or 17-year-old person who has not yet had sex or who has not yet, sort of accepted their own bodies sort of needs to read like another person's journey and how hard it was and how much they struggled, but yet somehow they made it through to the other side, as it were. And that, sex doesn't have to be like mind blowing. It can just be a thing that happens and isn't good or bad, but can be kind of funny and fun. Mm-hmm. And then there's also like a lot of, like sometimes friendship is hard. Sometimes you're an asshole. Sometimes you have to figure out how to not be an asshole.
Yep.
And also all YA parents are terrible.
Yep.
Except for Howie's mom. So how do we feel about the book overall? Overall, I loved it. I was super excited to read it. I think, even though there were parts that I was like, I don't know how believable that is. Like as a whole story, I really liked it. I liked Morgan's sort of growth as a person, which is sort of different than having a hole. She got to grow. Yay, Morgan. And also, I don't know. I liked that she took charge and got the stick out of Howie's ass. Mm-hmm. Rather than sort of pining and being like, oh, the boy doesn't like me anymore. Life is awful. She's like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I want this guy. I think he still wants me. Fuck it. We're going to go for a road trip and he's going to like it.
She literally throws him over her shoulder and drags him off.
Which is baller. Like, I don't know why I've never done that in my life. Just be like, you are cute. Get over here. Get over here. I mean, yes, I have done that, but not like literal over the shoulder.
Let's go visit an angel.
Let's go visit an old lady who's got wings.
A wise woman. Yeah, no, I liked it a lot too. Like, I found it pretty compulsive reading, particularly the first time. And it was a little bit tricky because I was pretty busy, and so like I would start reading it at 11:30, and then it would be 12:30, and I'm like, well, I could just not sleep tonight and read the whole thing, but I also have to work tomorrow.
I think that's a pretty good, like, just overall recommendation for the book. Like, I could have stayed up all night, but instead I went to bed. Like, those were my two choices, and I almost chose the book.
And I'm 46, so we don't take these decisions lightly anymore.
Oh my God. Yeah, I loved it. I'm really excited that other people also get to read this. You can get either the hardcover, which is out today, or the ebook, which is also out today. I really liked it. Thank you again, Soho team, for sending this to me. Thank you, Kendra, for facilitating this. I really liked the book, even if I didn't know you, but I'm glad that I know you because you got a weird brain.
Yeah, and I enjoyed reading it very much. And it was, it was cool to get the early copy, but I don't think that was an important part of why I enjoyed it.
No, we would have bought it either way.
It's true. So... traditionally one of the questions we sometimes ask is how much the worst was Archie in this work of fiction. So
yeah, I don't know, on a scale of like having to do every single Alana Stone workout video back to back, or having to have a really long conversation with Morgan's former boss from the co-op.
What cheer, my ladies? I return with libations as promised.
How awful was Archie?
I'm not even sure which end of the scale is which. Let's see. Archie is having photographs of your bra put on every electric pole in town with a link to some website that is going to have something horrible on it.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And what do you think?
I'm going to say Archie is as bad as putting a quarter into the Mike and Ike machine and having nothing come out.
That's bad.
Yeah. So anyway, fuck you, Archie.
Fuck you.
I hope you and your perfectly stomached children all rot in hell.
Yeah, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, like who? Because he's such a fucking douchebag that he's got to tell his fucking daughter, like, oh, by the way, my other family's perfect and you're not. Fuck off. Die in a fire, fuckface. I hate him.
The worst.
So he makes Chad look real good because Chad at least apologizes because he's just a dude bro who doesn't know better and has pretty eyes. But Archie, nothing good.
So what's the next book we're going to read, Carrie?
Well, Jake, the next book we're going to read is 17th Summer, which is by Maureen Daly. It was first published in 1942 and it is considered by some to be the first official young adult novel.
Yes, this may sound familiar to some of you because we also claimed we were going to review it and do it next in the last episode. But we lied. But this time we're not lying, and we actually will do it next. The author was actually 17 years old when she wrote it. And I started reading it, and before I took a break to go into Hole in the Middle, but I did enjoy what I read. So I'm looking forward to finishing it and talking to you about it.
I haven't even started it yet, so I'm really excited to start it and finish it and talk about it because I'm really interested in reading this.
All right. Well, cool. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can send an email to podcast@loveyoulikecrazy.com. You can go to our Facebook page and or group. You can find us on Twitter at LoveYAPod. I think that's all the things. And we would love to hear from you.
So yeah, this was Hole in the Middle by Kendra Fortmeyer.
And thanks to Ear Trumpet Audio, our podcasting network, which is always a lot of fun. I might be on, I think by the time this is out, I think it'll be the next episode after this is out. I'm going to be a guest on Beckett to the Future, which is the Quantum Leap podcast, where they talk about episodes in chronological order of the dates that Sam leaps to rather than the broadcast order.
Which is super cool because I love that show. In both the podcast and the actual show. So
I tried to bring some of the Love You Like Crazy spirit to my guest appearance. I enjoyed doing it. I think it'll be a fun episode to listen to. So
I can't wait. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah. So I guess with that, thanks for doing this with me, Carrie.
I am absolutely thrilled that I was able to do this. It was fun. And sorry I sound stupid, but I'm also sort of tired. So you get a lot of editing.
Editing is a key part of this whole process.
Yeah, I know.
Once it sort of hit me that the author of the book might actually listen to this, I was like, oh God, do I have to try to be smart?
Nope. We just have to be us.
Good. That part I could do. Okay, well, I'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Give me a call when you get back. Hey there.
Hey.
LoveYALikeCrazy.com. EarTrumpetAudio.com.
Ideas and entertainment.
Loud and clear.
Okay, well, I'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
And it's not that we're not smart. It's that it's not as fun to be like, well, let's talk about the metaphorical blah, blah, blahs and let's talk about pedagogical whatnots. It's like, nah, they banged.
I totally talked about the metaphorical whatnots.
I know you did. But then I talked about the bang, and so we're good.
Yeah, there was some banging to talk about, to be certain.